Hello and welcome to episode 2 of 2024. So, here are your 5 top tips on planning, the pose, the perch, personality and post-production. Okay, first things first, and that is planning. Make sure before you head out with your camera into the countryside and waste a whole day trying to find a species, that you go onto Google, go onto something like the RSPB website or even Wikipedia, check a few things about the species you want to take a picture of. So what you're looking out for is habitat, whether they're actually even in your country or your local area at that particular time of year, maybe what they eat, and even what they sound like when they're calling. All of these things will help to avoid disappointment on the day. And that is tip number 1. Oh, sorry, top tip number 2, the pose. So, birds posing. Now, just because a bird turns up in front of your camera doesn't mean it's necessarily the best pose. Try to get that lovely side-on angle where the bird's maybe looking up, maybe the bird's looking into the distance, or maybe the 3/4 angle where it's got its back to you but it's looking behind, or finally, looking directly down the camera, really engaging with you as the photographer. And that is tip number 2. Tip number 3, the perch. The perch can be one of the most important aspects that can make or break your photo. If you're in a bird hide, obviously everything's been cleared and everything's perfect. Out in the field, in woodland, wherever you may be, that's not always the case. If you found your subject and it's landed on a perch in front of you, just stay still and take your time. There's a good chance it will come back. Probably isn't the first time it's been to that particular perch. So make sure you frame up, get the best position you can, it'll be back. So just make sure you make the most of those opportunities when they arrive. Try to avoid foliage that's too close to the perch and try to get as much of that depth of field as you can for that really impactful shot. Small birds have a lot more personality than you may think. So once you've got that perch right and the pose right, just look for that little sign of personality. It might be an interesting look towards the camera. It might be an interesting look towards some food. It might be that the bird is chirping or exhibiting some behaviour that you've already looked at in the planning stage. If you can get all those things right, you can show personality even in what seems like the most common of birds. Now, here's a bonus P for you. Patience. With all of these previous tips and tricks, patience is the one thing you need for everything. Photography in general doesn't even need to be small birds. It doesn't really even need to be wildlife. But patience in learning the camera, finding out the planning, waiting for that bird to arrive, and even the next step, which is post-production. Okay, step 5. Well, 6 really, but step 5, post-production. If you're like me, you probably like to share your work on social media. Now, small birds in your local area are almost certainly competing against photographs of eagles and bears, snakes, deer, all sorts of exotic animals from all over the world. So the thing to do is make sure you work hard on your edit to show that bird off in the best light it can be shown off. Practice makes perfect. That's 2 more P's, that's 8. So make sure you get on YouTube, do some workshops, practice your editing techniques, whether it's Photoshop or Lightroom, and keep going and going and going until you have your craft as good as it can be. Finally, post your picture and be proud. That's 3 more P's. I think that's 11 now. Thanks for watching.